Staff Sergeant John Mitchell stood at attention as the Tellurian delegation boarded the USS Horizon. Their scaled bodies glistened under the ship's lights, powerful muscles visible with each movement. The tallest one stood nearly 7 feet high, with amber eyes that scanned the welcoming party with what John could only interpret as disdain. Captain Alan Prescott stepped forward. He was not a large man, average height, lean build, with short gray hair and deep blue eyes that seemed to hold a quiet intensity. "Commander Zaxthar," Prescott said, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Welcome aboard the Horizon. We're honored to host the first joint military exercise between our species." The Tellurian commander looked at the offered hand, before slowly extending his own clawed appendage. "The honor is ours, Captain. The Tellurian Imperium is curious about human military capabilities." John didn't miss the slight pause nor the skeptical glances exchanged among the alien soldiers. As the ship's senior medic, he had been briefed extensively on Tellurian physiology. They were natural warriors, stronger, faster, and more durable than humans. Their skin could resist small arms fire, and they could run at top speed for hours without tiring. It was no wonder they looked unimpressed by their human counterparts. After the formal introductions, John was tasked with showing the FIOR, Tellurian Medical Officer Dr. Krelvon, the ship's medical facilities. The alien doctor towered over him, her neck frill expanding slightly as she examined the equipment. "Your medical technology is quite advanced," she admitted, "though I wonder why you need so much of it." "How so?" John asked. "Tellurians heal naturally, at rates that would seem miraculous to humans. Our bodies reject most infections without intervention. These facilities seem excessive for such fragile beings." John bit back a retort. "We make do with what we have, Doctor." Later that evening, the ship's recreation area had been set up for an informal gathering, a chance for the two species to interact in a relaxed setting. John found himself sitting with a mixed group of humans and Tellurians, including Lieutenant Lisa Reeves. Lisa had been an anthropologist before joining the Space Marines, and her enthusiasm for cross-cultural exchange was genuine. "I've been studying what we know of Tellurian history," she said, addressing a Tellurian officer named Kexlor. "Your warrior traditions go back thousands of years, don't they?" The Tellurian nodded, his neck frill extending slightly in what John had learned was a sign of pride. "Our warrior epics tell of heroes who could defeat entire armies single-handedly. Not myths, but historical accounts, meticulously recorded." "We have similar traditions," Lisa said, smiling. "Human history and mythology are filled with stories of extraordinary heroes: Hercules, Achilles, Beowulf. Even modern superheroes in our fiction echo these ancient archetypes." Commander Zaxthar, who had been listening nearby, let out a sound that might have been a laugh. "Yes, but there is a difference. Our heroes were real. Yours are inventions." The room grew quieter as more people tuned into the conversation. Lisa's smile didn't waver. "Many of our myths may have been based on real people whose deeds were simply exaggerated over time." "Or perhaps," Zaxthar said, his voice carrying across the now silent room, "your species invents these stories because you are physically inferior. The mightiest human would fall to even our Tellurian children in combat." Several human officers stiffened, but maintained their professional composure. John felt his face grow warm with suppressed anger. Lisa tried again. "Physical strength isn't everything. Human myths often focus on cleverness, endurance, or moral strength. Compensations." Another Tellurian officer interjected. "Your heroes are clever because you cannot be strong. They endure because you cannot overwhelm. They are moral because you cannot conquer." The tension in the room was becoming uncomfortable. Lieutenant Commander Gary Walsh, the ship's tactical officer, spoke up. "With respect, strength comes in many forms. Humanity survived and thrived on a planet with predators far larger and stronger than ourselves. And yet you needed tools and weapons to do so." Zaxthar replied dismissively. "A true warrior species relies on natural abilities." "Tell me," said a female Tellurian officer, leaning forward with apparent curiosity, "do humans truly believe The absurd feats in your myths, that a human could hold up the sky like your Atlas, or survive unprotected in extreme environments like your comic book heroes. Before anyone could answer, the doors to the recreation area slid open, and Captain Prescott entered. The room quieted even further as he walked toward the center of the conversation. He had not been expected at the gathering, and his presence immediately commanded attention. "I couldn't help overhearing," he said mildly. His voice was soft, yet somehow carried to every corner of the room. An interesting discussion about mythology. Zaxthar straightened to his full height. "We were discussing the human tendency to invent improbable heroes, Captain." Prescott nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps there's truth in myth that science cannot explain," he said quietly. "Not all human capabilities are immediately obvious." There was something in the way he spoke, a certainty beyond simple patriotic defense, that made even the Tellurians pause. "What do you mean, Captain?" asked Kexlor. Prescott smiled slightly. "I mean that humans have been surprising themselves and others for thousands of years. We may not have armor for skin or claws for weapons, but when pushed to our limits—" He left the thought hanging in the air. Zaxthar's eyes narrowed. "You speak as though you have witnessed these mythic feats personally." "Let's just say I've seen humans do things that defy easy explanation," Prescott replied. "Perhaps during our joint exercises you'll have the chance to see for yourselves." With that cryptic statement, he excused himself, leaving behind a room filled with curious humans and slightly unsettled Tellurians. As the gathering broke up shortly afterward, John found himself walking back to his quarters alongside Lisa. "The captain was different tonight," Lisa observed. "I've never heard him speak that way before." John nodded. "There's always been something about him. Did you notice how the Tellurians reacted? It was like they sensed something we didn't." "Maybe," Lisa said thoughtfully. "Or maybe they just aren't used to being challenged." John glanced back over his shoulder, half expecting to see the captain still present. "Either way, I have a feeling these exercises are going to be more interesting than anyone expected." In his private quarters, Captain Alan Prescott stood before a small wooden box, the only personal item he kept. Opening it carefully, he removed an ancient bronze coin, its surface worn nearly smooth from countless years of handling. "It begins again," he whispered to himself, running his thumb over the coin's surface. "Time to remind them what humanity truly is." The morning after the tense gathering, the joint training exercises began. The USS Horizon's massive training deck had been divided into various stations to test different military skills. John Mitchell watched from the sidelines as the first contest began, a test of raw strength. Sergeant Kelly Daniels, the strongest woman in the human contingent, stepped up to face a Tellurian soldier who looked only slightly larger than average for his species. The contest was simple: lift increasingly heavy weights until one competitor could go no further. Kelly did well, lifting weights that would earn respect in any human gym. But the Tellurian lifted them with ease, barely showing strain even at the maximum setting the ship's equipment could provide. "An admirable effort," Commander Zaxthar said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "Perhaps we should move to the next challenge." The speed trials went no better. Ryan Garcia, the fastest sprinter among the human crew, was outrun by every Tellurian who competed, even the heaviest among them. By midday the pattern was clear. In every physical test the Tellurians dominated. "Did you expect anything different?" Dr. Krelvon asked John as they observed a marksmanship competition. "Our evolutionary path equipped us for combat. Yours equipped you for what exactly?" John kept his expression neutral. "Persistence, mainly. Humans aren't the strongest or fastest, but we can keep going longer than most species." Krelvon made a dismissive gesture. "A Tellurian can run at full speed for 6 hours without rest. How is your persistence an advantage?" Before John could answer, a commotion broke out at the combat ring. Lisa Reeves had volunteered for hand-to-hand combat training with a Tellurian officer. Despite her advanced martial arts training, she was being thoroughly outclassed. "Enough." Captain Prescott's voice cut through the noise as he stepped into the training area. "Lieutenant Reeves, are you injured?" Lisa rose to her feet, a bruise already forming on her cheek. "No, sir, just my pride." The captain nodded, then turned to Zaxathar. "Commander, I believe we've established that Tellurians have physical advantages in these particular tests. Perhaps we should move to exercises that better reflect real combat conditions." Zaxathar's neck frill extended slightly. "Such as adaptability, survival, teamwork in unpredictable circumstances." Prescott's eyes held a challenge. After all, battlefield victory rarely goes to the simply strongest or fastest. The Tellurian commander considered this. "What do you propose?" Instead of Prescott, it was Sergeant Kelly Daniels who stepped forward. Her earlier defeat in the strength contest had left her cheeks flushed with anger, but her voice was steady. "A survival challenge," she said. "Not here on the ship with controlled conditions, but planetside. Proxima B has environments that challenge both our species. 1 week minimal equipment." John couldn't help but admire Kelly's boldness, even as he questioned her judgment. Proxima B was not a friendly place. Extreme temperature shifts, dangerous indigenous life, and unpredictable weather patterns. It was used for advanced survival training, not casual competitions. Zaxathar looked to his officers, who nodded eagerly. "We accept. Each side will send 5 representatives. Kelly, John, and Lisa," Captain Prescott said immediately, "and communications specialist Ryan Garcia." "That's 4, Captain," Zaxathar pointed out. "I'll be the 5th, Prescott said quietly. This surprised everyone, humans and Tellurians alike. Ship captains rarely participated in dangerous ground missions, especially ones of this nature. "Sir," John began to protest, but Prescott silenced him with a look. "It's decided," the captain said. "We leave at 0600 tomorrow. Lieutenant Commander Walsh will have command of the horizon during my absence." As the crowd dispersed to prepare for the next day's challenge, John sought out Captain Prescott. He found him alone in the ship's observation deck, staring out at the stars and the rust-colored planet that hung in the distance. "Captain," John said, requesting permission to speak freely. Prescott turned, a faint smile on his lips. "Always, Sergeant." "Sir, are you sure about this? Proxima B isn't a picnic, and with respect, your skills might be more valuable on the ship than in a survival exercise." The captain was silent for a long moment, his gaze returning to the stars. "There are things about humanity they need to understand," he finally said, "and perhaps things we need to remember about ourselves." John noticed something strange as Prescott spoke, a profound sadness in his eyes that seemed at odds with his confident words. "What do you mean, sir?" Prescott shook his head slightly. "You'll see. Just keep an eye on our team down there. Lisa's combat skills are better than today's match suggested, and Kelly's determination makes up for a lot. Ryan's knowledge of communications might prove useful in unexpected ways." "And you, sir? What do you bring to the team?" John asked, then immediately regretted the potentially disrespectful question. But Prescott only smiled. "Experience, Sergeant. More than you might guess." The next morning, both teams gathered in the shuttle bay. The Tellurians had selected their 5 strongest warriors, including Commander Zaxathar himself and his second-in-command, Lieutenant Kavor. Each team was provided with identical survival packs, minimal supplies that would last only a few days, if used carefully. As they boarded the shuttle, Dr. Krelvon approached John. "I've studied your human medical techniques," she said, handing him a small packet. "This is a Tellurian healing compound. It might prove useful to your team." John was surprised by the gesture. "Thank you, Doctor." "Don't misunderstand," she replied. "I merely wish to ensure the competition remains fair. It would be less satisfying to win against injured opponents." The shuttle ride to the surface was tense and quiet. Through the viewport, John could see the harsh landscape of Proxima B growing larger, rocky plains, deep canyons, and in the distance, the dense vegetation of the equatorial band where they would be dropped. "The rules are simple," Zaxathar announced as they approached the landing zone. "Each team must navigate to the extraction point, 50 miles north of the drop zone within 7 days. No outside communication except in life-threatening emergencies. No sabotaging the other team. Agreed, Prescott said. As the shuttle touched down and the teams prepared to disembark, John noticed Captain Prescott running his thumb over a small object in his palm, what looked like an ancient coin. The captain caught John watching and quickly pocketed the item. For luck? John asked. For remembrance, Prescott replied. Then, more loudly to the team, let's move out. We have a long journey ahead. The two teams exited the shuttle and watched it rise back to orbit. As it disappeared from view, they faced each other one last time before heading in opposite directions toward the same distant goal. Kelly took the lead, setting a steady pace that the humans could maintain for hours. John fell into step beside Captain Prescott, who walked with an ease that belied his age. Do you really think we have a chance, sir? John asked quietly. Prescott's eyes scanned the horizon, where dark clouds were gathering. Humanity has survived against the odds for thousands of years, Sergeant. This is just one more challenge. By nightfall, the storm on the horizon had grown closer, and the temperature was dropping rapidly. As the human team set up their shelter, John couldn't help but wonder what the captain had meant by his cryptic statements. Whatever the answer, he suspected they would all find out in the coming days. The first 2 days on Proxima B passed with little interaction between the human and Tellurian teams. Both groups made steady progress toward the extraction point, though the human team moved slower across the difficult terrain. By the afternoon of the third day, dark clouds filled the sky. The air grew heavy with the scent of coming rain. John checked their portable weather scanner with concern. Captain, we've got trouble, he said, showing the readings to Prescott. This isn't just rain. It's an ionic storm, one of the big ones. Prescott nodded grimly. Find shelter, now. They were in a rocky area with steep cliffs rising on either side of a narrow valley. Lisa pointed to a dark opening in the cliff face about 50 yards ahead. Cave system there. Should provide good shelter. As they hurried toward the cave entrance, the wind picked up dramatically. The first drops of rain felt like tiny needles against their skin, the trademark of Proxima B's ionic storms, which carried a slight electrical charge. Just as they reached the cave mouth, John spotted movement on the ridge above them. The Tellurians, he said, pointing. The alien team was also seeking shelter from the storm, moving quickly along the top of the ridge. As the humans watched, a section of the path crumbled beneath the Tellurians' feet. 2 of them jumped clear, but the others disappeared in a cloud of dust and falling rocks. They're coming down right on top of us, Kelly shouted. The humans pressed themselves against the cave wall as rocks and debris crashed down just outside the entrance. When the dust cleared, they saw 3 Tellurians picking themselves up from the ground. Commander Zaxthar, Lieutenant Kavor, and another soldier John didn't recognize. Zaxthar's eyes narrowed when he saw the humans. You. Is this your doing? Don't. Be ridiculous, Lisa shot back. The path collapsed. We saw it happen. Before the argument could escalate, a sound like thunder split the air, but it wasn't coming from the storm. The ground beneath their feet trembled, and more rocks tumbled. Down from above, inside now, Prescott ordered, waving both humans and Tellurians into the cave. Landslide! They barely made it inside before the cave entrance was partially blocked by falling debris. The remaining opening let in just enough light to see by. Everyone all right? John asked, automatically falling into his medic role. The humans had only minor scrapes and bruises. 2 of the Tellurians appeared unharmed, but Lieutenant Kavor lay on the ground, his leg trapped beneath a large boulder. Kavor is injured, Zaxthar announced, as if daring the humans to care. John moved forward to examine the trapped Tellurian. The rock has him pinned, but I don't think the leg is crushed. If we can lift it off. Ryan and Kelly positioned themselves on one side of the boulder while Zaxthar and the other Tellurian took the other side. Despite their combined strength, the rock barely moved. It's too heavy, Ryan gasped, sweat already beading on his forehead despite the cool cave air. Suddenly, the ground shook again. A new sound filled the cave, a soft hissing noise. Gas, Lisa said, her face worried. This must be a vent from the planet's subsurface activity. John smelled it too, a sharp, sulfurous odor that made his eyes water. "We need to move deeper, into the cave, away from the gas." "Not without Kavor," Zaxthar said firmly. "We tried moving the rock, it's too heavy," Kelly argued. "Then you humans go," the Tellurian commander said. "We will stay with our comrade." John looked at Zaxthar with new respect. The alien's loyalty to his soldier was admirable, even if it meant risking his own life. Captain Prescott, who had been examining the deeper passages of the cave, returned to the group. He took in the situation with a quick glance. "The gas is filling the chamber quickly," he noted. "We have minutes at most before it reaches toxic levels." "We've tried moving the rock," John explained. "It's too heavy." Prescott stepped forward and examined the boulder and Kavor's trapped leg. Without a word, he positioned himself at the largest end of the rock. "Captain, don't," Ryan warned. Even the Tellurians couldn't move it. Prescott ignored him. "When I lift, pull him out," he said to Zaxthar. Before anyone could protest further, Prescott took a deep breath and set his hands against the boulder. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, incredibly, the massive rock began to move. John watched, in disbelief as the captain, a man of average build and well into his 50s, lifted the boulder that 4 strong adults had barely budged. Veins stood out on Prescott's neck and forehead, but the rock continued to rise until there was enough space for the Tellurians to pull Kavor free. As soon as Kavor was clear, Prescott let the boulder drop. It landed with a thud that sent dust flying into the air. The captain straightened, breathing hard but otherwise showing no signs of the enormous effort he had just made. In the dim light filtering through the partially blocked cave entrance, John thought he saw something strange, a brief glow in Prescott's eyes like blue fire that flickered and then disappeared. "Impossible," whispered Zaxthar. "No human could lift that weight." The gas was now visibly filling the chamber, a greenish mist that swirled around their ankles and was quickly rising. "Questions later," Prescott said, his voice steady. "We need to move deeper into the cave system, find clean air." Kavor couldn't walk on his injured leg. The Tellurians prepared to carry him, but the narrow passages would make it difficult. "I'll take him," Prescott offered. Before anyone could object, he lifted the injured Tellurian as if he weighed no more than a child and started down the passage Lisa had scouted. The group moved quickly through the cave system, the toxic gas pursuing them like a living thing. Ryan began to cough, then Lisa. Even the Tellurians, with their more resilient respiratory systems, were showing signs of distress. Only Prescott, still carrying Kavor, seemed unaffected. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, they emerged into a larger chamber with multiple passages leading off it. The air here was clearer, though the distant sound of the storm could still be heard echoing through the rock. Prescott gently set Kavor down against a wall, and John immediately moved to examine the Tellurian's leg. "It's not broken," John confirmed, "but there's significant muscle damage. He shouldn't walk on it for at least a day." "We cannot remain here," Zaxthar said. "The extraction point is still many miles away." "We'll make a stretcher," Kelly suggested. "Take turns carrying him." While the others rested and Kelly and Ryan gathered materials for a stretcher, John approached Captain Prescott, who stood apart from the group, staring at one of the cave walls where ancient water had carved strange patterns. "Sir," John said quietly, "what I saw back there, no human should have been able to lift that boulder." Prescott turned to face him, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "Is that a question, Sergeant?" "I guess it is." "What are you, sir?" "What I saw today wasn't normal." Prescott met his gaze steadily. "I'm human, Sergeant, just older than I look." Before John could ask what that meant, Zaxthar approached them. The Tellurian commander's posture was less arrogant than before. His neck frill flat against his scales, and what John had learned indicated thoughtfulness or concern. "Captain Prescott," Zaxthar said formally, "the Tellurian Imperium acknowledges the debt we owe you for saving Lieutenant Kavor's life." Prescott nodded. "No debt is owed between allies, Commander." "Perhaps," Zaxthar said, "we are not as different as I first believed." As the storm continued to rage outside, the two teams worked together to tend to Kavor's injuries and plan their next move. John couldn't help noticing how the Tellurians now watched Captain Prescott, with a mixture of curiosity, respect, and something that looked very much like fear. The storm outside the cave lasted through the night. By morning, the two teams had formed an uneasy alliance. With Kavor injured and the cave entrance partially blocked, they agreed to travel together once they could safely leave. "The storm has passed," Ryan reported, checking his weather scanner. "But we've lost almost a full day. We'll need to increase our pace to reach the extraction point on time." The teams cleared enough of the fallen rocks to exit the cave. Outside, the landscape had changed dramatically. The storm had washed away paths and created new obstacles. In some areas, the ground was still wet and unstable. "We should head north through that valley," Zaxithar pointed. "It is the most direct route." Lisa shook her head. "The scanner shows unstable ground there. We need to go around, follow the ridgeline." For a moment, it seemed the fragile alliance might break over this disagreement, but Captain Prescott settled the matter. "We'll follow the ridge," he said in a tone that invited no argument. Safety before speed. They made good progress through the morning. John and the other Tellurian soldier, whose name was Vexnar, took turns carrying the makeshift stretcher with Kavor. The injured Tellurian was clearly frustrated by his dependence on others, but made no complaints. By midday, they stopped to rest, near a small stream of clear water, a rare find on Proxima B, where most surface water contained minerals toxic to both humans and Tellurians. While the others refilled their water containers, Lisa found Captain Prescott sitting alone on a rock outcropping, sketching something in a small notebook he had pulled from his pack. Curious, she approached him. "I didn't know you were an artist, Captain." Prescott didn't look up. "Not an artist, just recording memories." Lisa glanced at the page and was surprised to see an intricate drawing of what appeared to be an ancient ship, its sails billowing in the wind. "That looks like a Greek trireme," she observed, her anthropologist's training recognizing the distinctive design. "It was called the Argo," Prescott replied without looking up. "The details in the historical records aren't quite right." "The Argo? From the myth of Jason and the Argonauts?" Lisa asked, surprised by his certainty about a vessel from ancient legend. Before Prescott could answer, a shout came from the stream. One of the water containers had slipped into the current and was being carried away. As Ryan waded in to retrieve it, the ground beneath his feet suddenly collapsed, plunging him into a sinkhole hidden beneath the water. John rushed to the edge of the stream. "Ryan, can you hear me?" A faint call came from below. "I'm okay, but I think my leg's broken. I can't climb out." The sinkhole had opened into what appeared to be part of an underground water system. Ryan had fallen about 15 feet down and was now on a rocky ledge with water rushing past him into darkness. "We need rope," Kelly said, already digging in. Her pack. Zaxthar assessed the situation with military precision. "The opening is too narrow for a Tellurian to fit through. One of you humans will need to go down." They quickly fashioned a rescue rope from their climbing gear. John, as the team medic, prepared to descend. "I should go," he said. "If his leg is broken, he'll need immediate medical attention." As they secured the rope, a low growling sound came from nearby. Everyone froze. "What was that?" Lisa whispered. "Cave dwellers," Vexnar said, his hand moving to his weapon. "Predators that live in the planet's underground water systems." The growling came again, louder this time, and from multiple directions. From the shadows between rocks, creatures began to emerge, resembling wolf-sized scorpions with chameleon-like skin that shifted colors to match their surroundings. "Stalkers," Zaxthar hissed. "They hunt in packs, and we're standing between them and their way home," Kelly added, drawing her knife. The creatures advanced slowly, their many legs moving with eerie coordination. John counted at least 8 of them, surrounding the group in a loose circle. "Ryan's still down there," Lisa reminded them. "We fight," Zaxithar declared, drawing his own blade. Tellurian weapons weren't allowed in the challenge, but each soldier carried a survival knife. The first creature attacked without warning, leaping toward Kelly with surprising speed. She ducked and slashed at it, her knife scraping against its armored hide with little effect. Two more lunged at the Tellurians, who met them with greater success. Tellurian strength behind their blades managed to wound one of the creatures, sending it skittering back with a high-pitched shriek. "The underside," Zaxthar called out. "Their armor is weaker there." The battle became chaotic. John found himself back-to-back with Vexnar, fending off attacks while trying to keep the creatures away from Kavor, who could not defend himself. Across the clearing, Lisa had climbed onto a rock to gain higher ground, jabbing downward at any creature that came near. But one of the stalkers began scaling the rock, its claws finding purchase where human fingers could not. "Lisa!" John shouted, seeing her danger but unable to reach her. A blur of movement caught his eye. Captain Prescott had picked up a fallen branch and moved with incredible speed, crossing the clearing in seconds. He struck the climbing stalker with such force that the branch shattered, but the creature was knocked off the rock. Without pausing, Prescott grabbed one of the fallen creatures by its tail and swung it in a complete circle, using it as a weapon against two others that approached. The display of strength was impossible for a normal human. The stalker must have weighed at least 200 pounds. Zaxthar had become separated from his group and found himself cornered against the stream. Three stalkers approached him, clicking, their pincers in what seemed like anticipation. The Tellurian commander fought well, wounding one and killing another, but the third leaped onto his back, its stinger poised to strike. John saw it happen, but was too far away to help. Then Prescott was there, pulling the creature off Zaxthar and snapping its stinger with his bare hands. The captain moved with a fluid grace that spoke of centuries of combat experience, using techniques John had never seen before, a blend of fighting styles from different eras of human history. The remaining stalkers, seeing several of their pack killed, retreated into the shadows. The sudden silence was broken only by heavy breathing and Ryan's distant calls from the sinkhole. Zaxthar stared at Prescott, his expression unreadable. "No human moves like that," he said finally, "or possesses such strength." As the group gathered, themselves, tending to minor injuries and preparing to rescue Ryan, Zaxthar's words hung in the air. Everyone had seen Prescott's impossible feats during the battle. The captain met their stares calmly, wiping stalker blood from his hands onto the rocks. "We still have a man to rescue," he reminded them, ignoring the unspoken questions, "and a long way to go." As John prepared to descend into the sinkhole, he couldn't help noticing how differently everyone now looked at Captain Prescott, with awe, confusion, and in the case of the Tellurians, a growing respect tinged with unease. Whatever Captain Prescott was, he was far more than he appeared to be, and John suspected they were about to learn much more about him in the days ahead. After rescuing Ryan from the sinkhole, the combined team made slower progress. Ryan's broken leg had been set and bandaged by John, but he needed help walking. Now both teams had injured members to care for. 2 days later, as they neared the extraction point, they made camp in a sheltered valley. The mood had changed dramatically since the beginning of the challenge. The Tellurians no longer mocked or dismissed the humans. Instead, they watched Captain Prescott with a mixture of respect and wariness. That evening, as they sat around a small fire, Zaxthar finally spoke the question that had been on everyone's mind. "You are not what you appear to be, Captain," said directly. "No human moves like you did against the stalkers. No human lifts boulders that 4 strong adults could barely budge." The others fell silent, all eyes turning to Prescott. The captain stared into the fire for a long moment before looking up at the assembled soldiers. "Human and alien. The myths you mocked," he said quietly. "I didn't learn about them from books or vids. I witnessed them being born." A stunned silence followed his words. "What do you mean?" Lisa asked finally. Prescott reached into his pocket and pulled out the ancient coin John had glimpsed earlier. He held it up so the firelight caught its worn surface. "This was given to me at Marathon," he said, "in what you would call 490 BCE. I was a common soldier in the Greek army when we faced the Persian invasion." John stared at the captain in disbelief. "Sir, that's impossible. That would make you over 2,500 years old. 315 years, to be more precise, Prescott said with a faint smile. Zaxthar's neck frill extended fully, a sign of intense emotion. You claim to be immortal? I wasn't born this way, Prescott explained. I was born Nicholas Chandler in a small village near Athens. During the Battle of Marathon, something happened, a cosmic event that later generations would try to explain as the intervention of gods. He turned the ancient coin over in his fingers, the movement practiced and familiar. A strange light fell from the sky during the battle. Most didn't notice it in the chaos, but those of us who were directly touched by it were changed. We stopped aging. Wounds that should have been fatal healed in days. How many? Kelly asked, her voice barely above a whisper. On Earth? Perhaps a dozen that I know of. We've found others throughout history. Men and women changed by similar events in different places. If this is true, Zaxthar said, still skeptical, you have lived through the entire recorded history of your species. Prescott nodded. I've fought in more wars than I care to remember. I've seen empires rise and fall. I've watched humans perform feats that defy what should be possible. Is that why you defended human myths so strongly? Lisa asked. Because you've seen the heroes? I've seen ordinary humans do extraordinary things, Prescott corrected. The myths often exaggerate, but at their core they speak to something real. He leaned forward, his face earnest in the firelight. I've seen a mother lift a fallen tree off her child that 6 men couldn't move. I've watched a wounded soldier continue fighting despite injuries that should have killed him instantly, just to give his friends time to escape. I've witnessed a firefighter run into a burning building 5 times until his body simply gave out, saving 12 lives in the process. These are not myths, he continued. They're history, my history. Humanity's greatest strength isn't in our bodies, but in our refusal to accept limitations when it matters most. Ryan, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. Why reveal yourself? Now, after hiding for so long? Prescott smiled. I'm not always hiding. Sometimes I live quietly for decades. Other times, when humanity needs reminding of what they're capable of, I step forward. Like now, as we move into the stars and meet other species who might judge us only by our physical limitations. John remembered Prescott's words on the observation deck. There are things about humanity they need to understand, and perhaps things we need to remember about ourselves. You weren't just defending humans to the Tellurians, John realized. You were reminding us too. Humans forget their own remarkable nature, Prescott agreed. You see yourselves as ordinary because extraordinary. Moments are rare in any single lifetime, but I've seen thousands of such moments across centuries. The fire crackled as everyone absorbed the captain's incredible story. How do we know this is not an elaborate deception? Zaxthar asked finally. Some technology that gives you unusual strength? You've scanned me, Prescott pointed out. Your medical technology found nothing unusual. Besides, why would I lie? What would be the purpose? Before Zaxthar could answer, Lisa spoke up. The Argo, she said. The ship you were drawing. You said the historical records weren't quite right. Prescott smiled. The actual ship was smaller than the legends claim, and Jason was far from the noble hero depicted in the myths. But the journey was real. I joined the crew 3 years after Marathon. Throughout the night, the captain answered their questions, carefully, thoughtfully, revealing glimpses of a lifespan that stretched across millennia. He spoke of ancient Rome, medieval Europe, the Renaissance, the World Wars, and humanity's first tentative steps into space. As dawn approached, the group prepared for the final leg of their journey to the extraction point. The mood was contemplative, rather than competitive. The challenge that had begun as a contest of physical prowess had transformed into something far more profound. When they reached the extraction point later that day, the shuttle was waiting for them as promised. Before boarding, Zaxthar approached Prescott. My ancestors spoke of immortal watchers among the stars, he said. We thought them merely stories, as we thought your human heroes were just stories. I see now that dismissing the improbable is its own kind of blindness. The Tellurian commander extended his hand in the human gesture of respect. The Tellurian Imperium will be honored to call humanity allies, Captain Prescott, or whatever name you choose to use in this lifetime. The return journey to the USS Horizon was made in thoughtful silence. Both teams had been changed by their experience on Proxima B. The Tellurians regarded their human counterparts with new respect, and the humans stood taller, with renewed pride in their heritage. Back aboard the ship, as the joint exercise concluded, John found Prescott again in the observation deck looking out at the stars. "Will you tell us more?" John asked. "About history? About what you've seen?" Prescott smiled faintly. "That's why I'm here. Humanity is stepping into the stars now, and the galaxy needs to understand what that really means. Not just our technology, or our numbers, but our spirit." He looked out at the stars, at the ancient light reaching them from distant suns. "Every human myth contains a kernel of truth," he said. "And sometimes, the truth is more extraordinary than the myth itself."